I was appointed by Governor Childs in 1991. I had a good background in the criminal law. What I was more concerned about is the civil side. So obviously I got the civil rules out and started reading them, and by the time I took the bench, I felt I had a little bit of knowledge as to the civil side. Of course, I always found out that if you're in a situation where you're unsure of what you are doing or unsure of what decision you should make, that you can always say, you know, I'm going to take this under advisement and I'll have you a decision, and then you run to the books or you run to another judge with more experience and say, what do you think? Judges that I deal with mostly, Judge Ray Ulmer, who's retired now, and Judge Cobb, of course, who's retired. Those were the judges that I went to when I had any difficulty, and to say to them, what do you think about this? What should I do? It's obvious we can't know everything, and that's why we have all these books sitting over here to my right. I had prosecuted in front of Judge Cobb and Judge Ulmer, and I considered them friends, and always felt comfortable going to them to say, what do you think about this? Because they had a lot more experience than I have as judges. I've had lots of experience as a prosecutor, but had never obviously been a judge before. Well, I had prosecuted for 16 years, and I felt it was a good time in my career, and I'd always thought about being a judge. I practiced in front of Judge Seaver, who was the judge here, and I felt that I could give something to the system based upon my experience and knowledge, and I thought I would enjoy it. There's a lot of prestige in being a judge, and I'm like anybody else. I enjoy the prestige of this office, and I've always tried to maintain the decorum and understand that people look up to judges mostly, and make sure that they still felt that way when they left my courtroom. And I went to Catholic school for 9 years down in St. Pete. Then I went to St. Pete High School and graduated from there, and graduated from St. Pete Junior College. After I went overseas in the service in 1968-69, came back and was a junior at the University of South Florida, and I was a history major of all things, and I had always thought that I would like to be an attorney, and be honest with you, a history degree is not really worth much unless you're going to be a school teacher or a lawyer. So I had always had aspirations to be an attorney. My uncle was a local lawyer in St. Pete, and I know he always enjoyed the profession. Well, I don't know that it changed my life any. I found that my good friends were very concerned about calling me Bob anymore. They wanted to call me Judge, and I one day there was this guy had worked for the sheriff for years. He was kind of a crotchety old guy, and he was retired. And I was talking to him, and he kept calling me Judge. And I said, Louis, you don't need to call me Judge. And he said, well, how about dumbass? And I said, Judge will be just fine. And Bernie McCabe did it to me one time, too. He said something derogatory when I said, you don't need to call me Judge, Bernie. And he said, what about da-da-da? And I said, Judge will be just fine. But like I said, I've enjoyed the job. I enjoy people. And but I think at least in the beginning, other people treat you a little differently when you get this job. Well, I think I've learned to be a little more patient, to be a better listener, because you have to listen a lot to some attorneys. I tend to be a bottom line person, and most of them who've come to me over the years know that I'm not interested in things I already know. I want to know, teach me something or tell me something about your case that would convince me that I should go your way. Patience is probably a big part of that. I'm not a real patient person. but I'm a better listener now than I was 21 years ago when I got this job. I think we've become more defendant-oriented in the treatment of defendants. I had a case in there today where a lady was in there on a violation of probation, and I offered her 60 days in the county jail. It was on a DUI probation from 2003. She'd managed to stay away all these years. And the defense came up with a case that said because she didn't have a lawyer when she pled, that I couldn't put her in jail. She waived her right to a lawyer. They're going to take an appeal on that. But I think the courts have shifted more toward the defense than they have toward the prosecution. Technology is kind of incredible. When I started here, I did advisories for almost 2 years every day. And we used to bring all the defendants from the jail, and I have to imagine that that's a tremendous cost. And now, of course, we go down the hall and into the advisory room, and we do it on TV. We don't have to bring all these people over. And I imagine that saved on gasoline. It saved on time that the corrections officers would have to come with them, and I think it made it quicker for us. I like to think I have a good reputation for treating people fairly. You know, in county courts, you see nothing but people all the time, and I think that you are not as bound by a lot of the rules that you have in circuit court, because of course the cases in circuit court, especially criminal, are a lot more serious, obviously. And there's times in county court when you can just do the right thing. And I have different ways of helping people. I don't like putting people in jail unless they keep coming back over and over again. And I try to find ways to help them. For instance, I'm really very concerned about the marijuana laws in our country. I personally think marijuana should be legal. I don't think a person who is found with a small amount of marijuana should have their license, or if they are adjudicated, they lose their license for 2 years. And then they go on what I call the driving with suspended license merry-go-round. You know, they don't have a license, they drive to work, they get stopped, they get another ticket, which is a criminal ticket. And it's just a real merry-go-round. And I really like to feel that I've treated people fairly to keep them out of jail when they don't need to be in jail. I've been married for 40 years, and that's pretty much my life, my wife and my 3 children. But my 3 children are no longer in the house. My youngest daughter is 29. I read something one time that said, in a relationship, when you have an argument, it's not important who wins or loses. It's the restoration of domestic tranquility which is important. And I feel the same way about the system and the things I do. I think it's very smart to have a tranquility and not get excited about things. I know some judges who get very excited about little things, and I've practiced in front of them before I got this job. But I think it's real important, and I've tried to do it in everyday life, is to not get too excited about things. You know, unless it's something that really need to get excited. And you know, when you deal with these people in courts, you don't need to. You know, even when I put them in jail, I'm not mean to them. Most of them I'll say, "You understand why I'm putting you in jail?" And most of them say, "Yeah, I do." Judge Ulmer had a guy come in and he had some kind of hepatitis or something. So we had this huge courtroom and everybody was out, and Judge Ulmer made him sit in the very last row, and they hollered back and forth at each other. And then I had a guy said he didn't like my court, he wanted to change the menu. And and a lot of times they'll say that they want an adjudication of guilt. And of course that's because they don't understand the terms. The guy came into the courtroom and I was just sitting up there. I'd got in there early, And my bailiff said to him, "Sir, will you take up your hat?" And he did the F.U. to her. And I was just sitting there doing something. Of course, I immediately looked up when he said it. And I said to him, "Sir, you need to watch your language and take your hat off." He said F.U. to me. So I immediately had her seize him up and bring him up, and I gave him 30 days. So when I got back in here, Lisa says to me, "There are two guys from the VFW here." Well, I'm in the VFW, so I said, "Come on, guys, what's up?" He said, "Joe Smith, who you just put in jail, he's really screwed up from the war. He wasn't even supposed to be in your courtroom." So I let him, and his name wasn't Joe Smith, but I said, "All right, just tell the fool not to come in and do that stuff again." It's the one that sticks in my mind. When you got this job, you're dealing with all kinds of people. Some people take it very calmly, and others, well, I had one guy that walked out in a traffic case, and this is non-criminal stuff, and he about tore the door off the hinges. So I said, "Will you all ask Mr. So-and-so to come back in here?" So when he comes back, he's followed by four deputies, and he's gotten in handcuffs already. So I got him up, and I said, "How come you tore my door off the hinges?" He said, "Well, I was mad at you because of the way you ruled." And I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, I didn't expect you to be happy about it, because I hit him with a good fine." I said, "Now, if you want to walk out of here, or would you prefer going to jail?" And of course, he made the right decision. And you get a lot of people, and they just have different personalities. If you deal with them without you getting angry, then you're doing a better job. When you're angry, you don't make good decisions. Judge Sestak has a thing over there that, I think it says, what is it, KYBMS, which means keep your big mouth shut. When judges get in trouble, it's because they've opened their big mouths and said something they shouldn't. So I try not to do that, even though I tend not to follow that rule all the time. Someone who is fair and who is concerned about the people that come in front of me, and obviously about doing a good job. And I told somebody I've got an open book, and he said, "Yeah, a pretty dull one too." Always be prepared, always be on time. See, some judges, for some reason, think they've been ordained rather than elected or appointed. I am always on time. In the 21 years I've had this job, you can count on one hand the time I've been late. I think it's very important, and it's rude to keep people waiting, and so that's in my mind, a very important thing. We have some judges who are very good judges, but when you mention their name, somebody will say, "Well, gee, they don't ever come in on time." These people are required to be in court, and if they're required to be there, you should be on time. And that, to me, that's absolutely the most important thing that you can consider. A lot of times I'll see lawyers sitting out here, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'll say, "Well, what time's your hearing?" They'll say, "Well, it's 10 o'clock. And so they've been sitting there an hour and 15 minutes. And I've always told new judges that lawyers can give you contributions or opposition. So it would be better that they give you contributions than opposition. I plan to do a lot more fishing. They had a party for me, which was well attended, and gave me a bunch of gift certificates to the Bass Pro Shop. So I've been over there and bought a new rod and a bunch of fishing stuff. And we have a little house in Citrus County on the water. So we do a lot of fishing. We do a lot of boating. I go to the Keys every year for lobster season. What we're going to do I think it's last April or 1st of May, is go to the New Orleans Jazz Festival, and then perhaps go west and to Salt Lake City where my sisters live, and then my wife wants to go to California, which is fine by me. When you got this job, any job, I think, if you take more than a week's vacation, when you get back, stuff's all piled up. So, I've never taken a vacation that was more than a week in the 21 years I've had this job. So I know my wife's looking forward, she's a retired teacher, to taking a vacation at more than a week. I've enjoyed this job. I've enjoyed the people that I've had to deal with, the court admin and the other judges, and I've been appointed a senior judge by the Chief Justice, and I hope I can come in and do some work. Well, I got to volunteer until a certain period of time goes by, and so Gay has already asked me if I'm willing to volunteer, and I told her I didn't want to make it a, work all week. I said I'll come in if somebody's sick or they got an overload, but I don't want to make, until I'm getting paid, I don't want to do it every day.